Hello friends, welcome. Friends, those who are following me, uh, all my work that I'm doing in my YouTube channel must be aware of this video which I did where I said Bharti Airtel seeks equity conversion, will 52,000 crores of spectrum due turn into government stake. Now, this video is not about repeating what I have already said. I have already done two videos. This video is going to be quite different and distinct. So what triggered this video and what I'm going to talk about in this video is what I'm going to start explaining to you first before I go into details. Now, what triggered this video? That is the first question. The video was triggered by this one of my viewers comment in this video which I just mentioned. So the question was, can you make a video on JIO used RCOM 30% spectrum and paid 195 crores of AGR due, but RCOM AGR due of 25,000 crores is still hanging in balance. So many of your viewers must be having a query as to why JIO got scot-free by paying only 195 crores of AGR dues and RCOM is still holding 25,000 crores of AGR due which government is not able to collect, right? So this is one of a very important question which I'm going to answer, and I'm going to give a very, very deep dive for you to understand this whole complex dynamics of Supreme Court and TDSAT judgment, which is the foundation on which this breakup happened, right? The other thing which I'm going to point out is Bharti's interpretation of the 2021 telecom package, where Bharti is saying Airtel noted that while it is entitled to convert all its dues into equity, given those beyond government, look at this, given those beyond government's moratorium period are also being converted into equity, it has restricted itself to convert only the AGR dues for the time being. Now, this is very important, given those beyond government's moratorium period, right? Because in the earlier video, the last video which I did yesterday in the evening, I said very clearly that this interpretation, given those beyond government moratorium, is not correct, right? And I'll tell you, if this becomes correct, who is going to be benefited the most? It is going to be not Bharti, it is going to be RJIO, right? So we are going to talk about that how RJIO got scot-free, right, in the RCOM's case, and if this is what the interpretation is, that how RJIO is going to get benefited most, even more than what Bharti will get benefited. So these are the two aspects which I am going to talk about in this video. Friends, it's going to be very, very interesting. Be with me till the end. Now, friends, what I have done is I actually have created a PowerPoint slide, as always I do. See, the title of the PowerPoint slide, let me just take away the ribbon because that will create more space, and I will just shrink this and I put my face here so that it becomes very clear. So title of this presentation is how RJIO and Bharti escaped AGR dues. It is not RJIO, by the way. Bharti also escaped AGR dues, right, of sellers. Seller means both RJIO and Bharti bought spectrum from the operators who exited the market. RJIO bought spectrum from RCOM, Bharti bought spectrum from Telenor, Aircel, Qualcomm, and then Ticona and others, right? And all their dues, AGR dues, did not accumulate into Bharti's liabilities. Just like RJIO's AGR dues were not including that of RCOM. Why? That is the question that we are going to answer in this video. So the introduction slide of this presentation is AGR crisis, Supreme Court 2019 final judgment, right? Fixed all dues, which we know. That's how the AGR became a huge crisis. Issue is, would spectrum buyers like RJIO and Bharti inherit sellers' AGR dues? This is the question which one of my viewers asked. The legal battle unfolded around spectrum trading rules. And let me explain what I mean. We'll go to the next slide. So there was a TDSAT ruling, and I'm going to basically take you directly to the ruling. But before I take you to the ruling, let's look at what the summary and the key outcome was. Let me just first go to the TDSAT judgment. So TDSAT judgment is this judgment. So this was dated 26 February 2019. Now, if you look at this, let me just make it continuous. single page continuous. Yeah. So if you look at this, was a petition where petitioner was Reliance Telecommunication and respondent was Union of India. And what was the prayer made by the petitioner? Direct and clarify under trading guidelines of 12/10/2015, the petitioner retains the due, means RCOM wanted to retain dues and liability arising out of the spectrum trading, which was mentioned, if you recall, right? So RCOM didn't want to pass on their liabilities to RJIO, who was acquiring the spectrum. And then it says direct and clarify under the trading guidelines dated 12/10/2015 that the dues and liabilities of the petitioner arising prior to the effective date, prior means before the effective date of the trade, is not transferred to the buyer. And who is the buyer? RJIO. So these are the two important prayers, and there are other prayers also. So let's go straight to the PPT. So what TDSAT clarified? This judgment was what was the date of this judgment? Let me go straight again to that judgment. Here is the judgment. The date of the judgment was 26 February 2019. So in this judgment, what TDSAT said, seller retains the liability of past due, right? Buyer liability for future dues arises after the effective date. Buyer liability only for future dues after the effective date. Condition is very, very important. Only if part of the spectrum is sold. Important, let's look at this again. TDSAT clarifies, seller retains liability of past dues. Buyer liability only for future dues. Condition is only if part of the spectrum is sold. So the extract from the TDSAT judgment, page 4, which TDSAT says that in case of sale of part spectrum, not full spectrum, friends, only part spectrum, dues will not include demands related to license, but only to the spectrum under trading. So it is not all dues which cannot be quantified, which cannot be seen, which were unforeseen dues. And let me just go straight to the judgment again so that you can clearly see what TDSAT said. I've read the judgment completely. And if you go down below, and you will see that in those situations, the term all dues may take a different color. What was the situation? Para 11 provides, para 11 was of the spectrum guide. Let me just show you para 11 also, the spectrum trading guidelines. So this is, let me just make it single page continuous, and you will see that this is the para 11, and let me read this para 11. So this is what? This is the spectrum guidelines for trading of access spectrum by service providers. So now if you go to para 11 and then you will go to that judgment, the seller shall create all dues prior to concluding any agreement for spectrum trading. Thereafter, any dues recoverable up to the effective date of trade shall be the liability of the buyer. The government shall at its discretion entitled to recover the amount, if any, found recoverable subsequent to the effective date of the trade, which was not known. Important, this is important, which was not known, which was AGR dues were not known to the parties at the time of effective date of trade, from the buyer or the seller jointly, means from both the buyer or the seller jointly. The demand, if any, related to licenses of sellers stated by the court, blah blah blah. Now this appears to us as if that all dues will get transferred to any buyer, but there was a clarification which was issued by DOT. So this is, if you look at this, just let me make it single page continuous, and if you go here and let me see, where is my pen? My pen has gone again. Let me just bring my pen and show screen burst. Yeah, so here's my pen, and let's go straight to that clarification. Now in the clarification, where is the clarification? Clarification is here. So this was the clarification which was issued on 12th May 2015 on the spectrum trading guidelines. Now here you will see that this is the para which is very important. Para 11 of the guideline, the seller must clear all dues pertaining to the LSA where the spectrum is traded, including one-time spectrum charges, right? In case dues for that band. In case where entire spectrum holding of TSP in all the LSAs intend to be traded, the seller have to clear all its pending dues, including past dues. So this is what the TDSAT has called latch on to, and saying that if the entire spectrum trading holding was not mentioned, then this interpretation of TDSAT, which you see here, could not have happened, right? Where it's saying seller retains liability of past dues, buyer liability is on for future dues after effective date, condition only if part of the spectrum is sold, and I have already given you the extract, right? Now let's go to the next slide. So what happened was the logic used by TDSAT was para 11, which I showed you of 2015 spectrum trading guideline. What was the text para 11? Para 11 was this. This was the para 11 which I showed you. Now if you go here and you'll see that it says seller clears all due before trading. DOT's clarification dated 12th May 2016. What was that? This was the DOT's clarification dated 12th May 2016. So it says that part spectrum seller retains liabilities. Entire spectrum seller must clear all dues, including those dues which could not be visualized, right? Extract is entire spectrum holding traded if seller clears all pending dues. DOT's page 1, which I already showed you. So how RJIO got benefited? RJIO bought only part of the spectrum of RCOM's 800 MHz, not full spectrum. There are other bands also. RCOM was holding 2100 MHz band, 900 MHz band. RJIO was not interested. It was only interested in the 800 MHz band. RCOM continued. Result was RJIO escaped the RCOM's past AGR dues, and the extract was tribunal should clarify. That was the TDSAT judgment, that the liability of past dues remained with the seller. TDSAT page 2, right? Now, if you go to the next slide, Supreme Court also in September 2020 kind of reiterate what TDSAT has said. So it did everything. We know that AGR dues were frozen, no reassessment. SC upheld the DOT's guideline and the TDSAT interpretation. And let me just show you where SC upheld the. So this is the judgment. So let me make a single page continuous. And here you will see what SC is saying. Therefore, a joint reading of para 11 of spectrum trading guideline dated 12/10/2015, which I already showed you, read with the clarification dated 12th May 2016, seller dues prior to the conclusion of the agreement seller spectrum trading shall not be upon the buyer. This is shall not be upon the buyer, right? So Supreme Court has reiterated the TDSAT judgment, and that judgment became final. So Bharti also got benefited. How Bharti got benefited? Bharti actually bought the entire Telenor spectrum, and therefore if you see when the Supreme Court judgment came, Telenor dues got appended with that of Bharti. But Bharti also bought spectrum in slices from Tata, Videocon and Aircel, but there was no liability. Why? It was partial spectrum, and therefore there was no liability. Full acquisition means liability has to be transferred, right? So again, the DOT's page 1 you have to call for, right? Then the summary is as follows of the legal. Partial spectrum sale means no buyer liability. And that answers the question of one of the viewers who raised that particular point, that how RJIO escaped RCOM's due. RCOM is still carrying around 25,000 crores and RJIO only paid 125 crores. Full spectrum sale means buyer inherit liability. Examples are RJIO buying RCOM, no liability. Bharti buying Telenor, no liability. Bharti buying Tata Videocon, no liability. And now let me show you how Bharti is buying Telenor, there was a liability. And for that, friends, you have to go to my tool, which I have in my website. So here, what I'm going to do a little bit of zooming in, and you will see, I'll just pick Telenor here. So Telenor is what I'm going to pick here, and you'll see that Telenor. So this is a chart which actually captures all spectrum bought by various operators in various auction and what were the outflow. So if you look at Telenor here, you'll find that Telenor bought spectrum only in 800 MHz band, right? You see that? Here also 800 MHz band. And Bharti bought all the Telenor spectrum in 800, and Telenor did not participate in any other auction. But it does not apply to Aircel. Let's go to Aircel, and if you see Aircel's outflow, and Bharti did not buy all spectrum for Aircel because Aircel also bought 2100 MHz spectrum, right? Aircel bought 1800 MHz spectrum, right? So there were slices of spectrum which were left out, right, which Bharti did not acquire. Bharti acquired Aircel's 2300 MHz spectrum, right? So that is why this situation is like that. I hope that you understand. Now let's come to the next question. What was the next question? Look at Bharti's letter. What was Bharti's letter? Airtel noted that while it is entitled to convert all its due into equity given those beyond the government's moratorium period are also being converted into equity. Means it is interpreting that those which were not part, those spectrum auctions which were not part of the moratorium is also can be converted to equity. Now, let me tell you friends why this is not going to happen. Let the operators do any kind of interpretation. It is not going to happen. DOT cannot take the risk of converting equity of spectrum which were not part of the moratorium. Do you know the reason why, friends? I'll give you the reason here. Here is the reason. So let me just go and tell you what is going to be the impact. It is going to become another scam and there will be a huge outcry. Why? Because look at what is RCOM's outflow. This is K crores, value K crores. Sorry, not RCOM, RJIO's outflow. RJIO, so we are basically talking about which spectrum blocks? 2021, 2022, 2024, right? Now you will see 2021 RJIO spent 57,000 crores. 2022 RJIO spent 88,000 crores. And 2024, it was an outflow was very, very less. But so if 2021 and 2022 becomes part of the package, telecom package of 2021, who is going to get benefited the most? It is RJIO going to benefit the most. Let's look at what Bharti's outflow is. Let me just go down below Bharti's outflow. So let's look at Bharti's outflow. Now I'll just go and and see what Bharti has paid all spectrum dues, but it did not pay 2021 and 2022. It is much less. Look at compared to it is 18,000 and 43,000 crores. So tell me, friends, if this is what the practical situation is, and this is what the interpretation which you are taking, which Airtel is taking, right, in their letter, do you think that this interpretation DOT has the capability to accept? Given the impact that it is going to cause and given the benefit that it is going to cause to RJIO, let's go again and look at what RJIO's outflows are for 2021 and 22 auction. Look at this outflow, 57,000 crores and 88,000 crores. Their outflow is the highest compared to all other past auctions. Look at this, 2010, 2014, 2015, 10,000 crores, 2016, 13,000 crores, and then 2021, 57,000 crores and 80. There is no way this will happen, friends. Let me be very clear with this. This equity conversion of spectrum dues of 2021 and 22 is never going to happen. Only possibility is that AGR dues might get adjusted some way because it was part of the moratorium. So summary of this discussion is very simple. Let's go to the question that my viewer has asked. Very simple question that viewer has asked, that can you make out a video on RJIO using 30% of RCOM spectrum and paid only 195 crores of spectrum, and RCOM is carrying 25,000 crores? Answer is very clear. RJIO did not buy the full spectrum. It only bought partial spectrum of RCOM. Therefore, it doesn't have the liability of AGR dues of RCOM. It applies to Bharti also. And Bharti bought partial spectrum for Tata, Videocon and Aircel, and therefore there was no liability. Only Telenor's liability got added to the Bharti. And the next item was that the interpretation of Bharti so this interpretation of Bharti, this one, Airtel noted, while it is entitled to cover and convert all dues into equity, all dues given those beyond the government's moratorium period. Think of this. Airtel is making interpretation like this. Viewers, you tell me, will this interpretation go through given the impact that is going to happen on government exchequer? Because who is going to be benefited most? It is not Airtel, it is RJIO's, because their liability of 2021 and 22 is the highest compared to all past auctions which were part of the moratorium. So that's all, friends, in this video. I hope that you liked, and the viewer who asked this question, I hope that the answer has been captured in this video. And if you have any comments, let me know, and any suggestions also, I am very welcome. And keep watching my channel, and thank you for viewing this video till the last, and I'll come back with a new video on a new topic next time. Thank you very much for watching.